Russell fires 5 rounds. This is a real warning to these UAPs.
A message from space. Scientists warn it could be a doomsday weapon.
An alien signal could shut down our computers, bringing our technological society to an end, or worse.
And when the horror comes to your home, who are the mysterious men in black?
He says that he got a threatening visit from a man whose skin looked like plastic, who apparently had no hair, no eyebrows, and his lips were bright red.
As they were talking, Hopkins says that the man idly wiped his lips with his hand. The red came off on his hand and he had no lips at all.
UFOs. Once the stuff of science fiction, now caught on camera. Finally forcing governments to reveal what they know.
UAPs are unexplained, but they are real.
Many of these phenomena have been cited in training ranges. We're very much concerned about safety of flight.
So let's just speculate for one moment that these things, whatever they are here to do not very good things.
Impossible engineering. Terrifying encounters. Sinister cover-ups. This is evidence of the unexplained. July the 17th, 2019. The USS Russell and its crew of over 270 men is in training water, 100 miles off the coast of San Diego, California.
Suddenly, the ship, a U.S. Navy destroyer, is surrounded. It's swarmed by unidentified flying objects.
The USS Russell is equipped with state-of-the-art sensors and processing systems, and what they record is extraordinary.
We have visual of one possible UAS with course 034 true.
What night vision filming seems to show is a triangular object flying high above the warship.
Tail numbers are unknown.
This is potentially a big national security threat. It's not wise to openly toy with or spy on one of these ships, and particularly not in the very sensitive training waters of that area of the Pacific.
On the 20th of July, just 3 days later, the objects return.
This time, the USS Russell fires 5 rounds. This is a real warning to these UAPs. They are clearly alarmed at their presence.
The USS Russell sent out a Ghostbusters team. Now, a Ghostbuster is an unmanned aircraft system device, a UAS, that essentially jams radio frequencies, intervening between a drone and its operator.
The UFOs come back again and again, menacing the Russell and other warships in the same area. On one occasion, they stay for up to 3 hours.
They were seen maintaining impressive speeds for impressive distances, and they were flying at heights of up to around 21,000 feet over the ocean.
Reports claim that they were behaving in a way that far exceeded commercially available unmanned aircraft, and that got people asking, were they extraterrestrial?
Triangular-shaped US military aircraft have been flying since 1956. The B-2 Spirit and the F-15 Eagle have a 3-cornered delta wing shape that allows them to fly at supersonic speeds and perform impressive high-speed airborne maneuvers. But they only make up a fraction of US military aircraft. They don't hover or behave like the triangular craft in the footage. These craft are much more like the mysterious triangular objects seen around the globe for decades that so far defy explanation.
Flashing red, green, and white solid light C.
One of the best attested was seen over the southwest United States in 1997.
Thousands of people across Arizona claim to have seen 2 separate incidents. The first was around 8 p.m.
The then governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, a former pilot and Air Force officer, was one of the witnesses.
And what he says is extraordinary. He says, I turned around and there was this great big delta-shaped thing came out of the northwest and headed down towards the South Valley. It was really eerie. It had embedded lights, and I always refer to it as otherworldly.
Later that same night, an even larger object seemed to appear.
Hey, Sue! Take a look at this.
Oh my God!
All right, you tell me what it is.
In the second incident, hundreds of people reported seeing a cluster of lights in the shape of a boomerang hovering in the sky.
Isn't that weird? Look at that. And they all went on in a sequence, too. Now, the thing that puzzles me is they can't be ordinary streetlights. They must be so bright that they would carry, because we're looking at about 25 miles away.
USA Today would later report that it was something like 6,000 feet across. That's more than a mile.
Pilots flying that night were seeing these lights in the sky and reporting them to air traffic controllers, but the controllers were seeing nothing on their radars.
The military denied any involvement, at least at first. But then they changed their tune. Oh, those lights, they said. Those were high-intensity flares dropped by a fleet to train A-10 Thunderbolts.
This explanation doesn't sit well with many of the witnesses, and that's including Governor Symington. And he wrote, as a pilot and a former Air Force officer, I can definitely say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object I'd ever seen. And it was certainly not high-altitude flares, because flares don't fly in formation.
So what was harassing the USS Russell in 2019 so badly the captain had to open fire? 3 years later, in 2022, US security officials were told to explain the incident before Congress.
From the very beginning, we took these reports very seriously. We instituted a data-driven approach to the investigations where we could collect as much data as possible and use all available resources to analyze and make informed decisions on the best ways to address our findings. U.S. Navy personnel recorded what appears to be triangles, some flashing, recorded several years ago, off the coast of the United States. And importantly, the video was taken through night vision goggles with a single lens reflex camera. The triangular appearance is a result of light passing through the night vision goggles and then being recorded by an SLR camera.
Bray said that this is a function of the camera lens that can basically distort objects that are out of focus.
With respect to the second two videos showing the small triangles, the hypothesis is that those are commercial drones.
Some type of drone, some type of unmanned aerial system.
Shortly after, footage said to be from the warship fleet was sent to an American online defense news site.
The drive revealed a daytime video of these objects. And here, these objects clearly resemble man-made drones with propellers.
This is USS Paul Hamilton collecting visual information. There are multiple UAS in the vicinity of Paul Hamilton, CPA 100 feet in altitude off the bow.
The Navy seemed to describe this as a quadcopter-style UAS. So was this some kind of foreign drone spying on US capabilities?
Foreign spycraft always has to be a possibility when you're considering things like this. But though these things look like drones, they're still exhibiting really unusual capabilities.
Even though quadcopters can fly, we know, as high as 30,000 feet, they can only maintain that height for very short periods of time.
The quadcopter battery lasts for roughly an hour or so.
How then did these UAPs fly out to these ships in the first place? And then, how did they stay there, hovering above them for 4.5 hours?
The USS Russell was 100 miles away from shore at the time. The fastest quadcopter in the world can travel at 165 miles per hour, but can only stay airborne for minutes at a time. There's no way a drone could have flown 100 miles to the USS Russell and then stayed airborne for hours.
Perhaps these were a bit of Chinese tech launched from container ships that sail from the Far East to the port at Los Angeles. It could be the perfect cover for launching spy operations.
What we know is that China represents a majority share of the world drone market. And just because commercially available drones have certain limitations, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Chinese couldn't have developed better technology in complete secrecy.
If China flew a fleet of drones into a US Navy training ground and harassed a destroyer at close quarters, it wouldn't just be reckless, it would be almost a declaration of war. And against the world's major military power, it would be unthinkable. The night vision film of these apparent triangles off San Diego certainly spooked those that witnessed the UFOs.
Tail numbers are unknown.
Many people feel that the public has not been given the whole truth about these mass sightings.
Enemies of terrestrial origin, or menacing alien craft piloted by a non-human intelligence. Either scenario spells trouble for the military that claims to have the world's greatest navy. A UFO encounter can be traumatic, but what happens next, in your own home, can be even worse.
On April 6, 1966, Andrew Greenwood was teaching his regular science class when, at around 11 a.m., a very excited child ran into the room claiming that there was a flying saucer outside.
He didn't know it, but this was the start of an incident that's become known as Australia's Roswell.
Initially, he didn't take any notice. But when the child was insistent, he went outside to check it out for himself.
He was shocked to see a mechanical object that appeared to be intelligently controlled hovering close to the power line.
Soon other witnesses joined Mr. Greenwood outside Westall High School in the Melbourne suburb of Clayton.
It was a large cigar-shaped silver UFO hovering just above the school grounds.
From what they could see, it had no windows, visible engines, propellers, or wings.
As they watched, they saw it cross over the road and eventually come to land on a patch of grass.
Several of the students reportedly jumped over the fence and ran after it, one of the students claiming that she could feel the heat from the craft as she got close to it.
Witnesses say they saw the craft rise up off the grass, then tilt slightly and take off at high speed.
And things were about to get even more bizarre. Greenwood recalls the UFO reappeared in another part of the sky, and now it was no longer alone.
Greenwood said that 5 small planes had now joined the craft, and it seemed as if they were doing everything they could to approach it, but also to avoid a collision.
Greenwood said it was the most astonishing thing that he'd ever seen.
Every time the planes got too close to the object, it would rapidly accelerate and then stop. Now, this game of cat and mouse went on for about 20 minutes, Greenwood says, before the UFO finally just took off and vanished.
With the UFO gone, the headmaster reportedly came outside and ordered everyone back inside.
Greenwood says that he believed that the headmaster of the school was disturbed by the object. He told the children that they would be punished if they talked about it. He also told the staff that if they talked about it, they could lose their jobs.
Then, more unexpected visitors arrived, this time in uniform.
Within 40 minutes, Army and Air Force trucks poured into the area and formed a security barrier around the patch of grass where the craft had landed.
Many of the witnesses said that military-looking officials told them to keep quiet about whatever they thought they saw.
The weird events seemed to be over, but a few days later, as Greenwood enjoyed a quiet evening at home, he was suddenly interrupted.
When he answered, there were 2 men standing there.
They claimed to be government officials, with one dressed in plain clothes and the other like a senior military official. They told him he was mistaken about what he saw and that he hadn't really seen anything. He was told he shouldn't say anything more about it. They were coming across as threatening at this point.
When he countered that he saw it and they didn't, they said he would be ill-advised to repeat that, and that clearly he had been drunk at the time, and they would have to report this, and that he would lose his job.
A bizarre and threatening home visit is an event that seems to happen to many people after they have seen a UFO. Researchers have even coined a term for these unpleasant visitors: Men in Black.
Men in Black. Now, these are well-dressed individuals who appear unannounced to talk to someone who has recently reported seeing a UFO.
These beings can often intimidate a person by saying they shouldn't speak to the press, or if something already is in the press, not to add any more about their experience with it.
These sinister figures often seem to have an uncanny level of prior knowledge.
Sometimes the Men in Black are said to show up even before the witnesses have reported the incident to the authorities.
Some have described them as inhuman, stiff, jerky-looking.
Dr. Herbert Hopkins was a physician living in Old Orchard Beach, Maine. He'd been studying a local UFO incident, something he soon came to regret.
On the night of September the 11th, 1976, he says that he got a threatening visit from a man whose skin looked like plastic, who apparently had no hair, no eyebrows, and his lips were bright red.
The man reportedly told him to destroy all of his UFO files. And as they were talking, Hopkins says that the man idly wiped his lips with his hand. The red came off on his hand, and Hopkins says that he had no lips at all.
It scared Hopkins enough that he destroyed his files right after the man left.
UFO investigators are divided over whether Men in Black are a paranormal part of the UFO phenomenon or genuine government officials tasked with keeping covert activity quiet.
If the Men in Black are government officials, why are they so keen to cover everything up?
In Melbourne, the question is, what do they want to suppress?
It has been suggested that the UFO was actually just a high-altitude balloon that the Australian government had launched to monitor nuclear tests at nearby Maralinga, Australia's answer to Area 51.
It would seem that these military men wanted to keep these tests quiet, but that feels implausible.
And then Greenwood says he got another visitor at his home, whose presence quickly scotched the idea that this event may have been a simple misidentification of a balloon.
Greenwood claimed that he was later interviewed by a Dr. James E. McDonald, a physicist who was known for his study of UFOs.
A lot of witnesses would be the whole school, which would be from 11 up to 15, some 16-year-olds, I suppose. 3 members of staff.
McDonald told Greenwood that he had been instructed by then-President Lyndon B. Johnson to interview Greenwood.
And how did it disappear? Did it vanish? All of a sudden,
while
you were all looking at it?
Greenwood said that the president had established an inquiry board to investigate these cases of unidentified flying objects.
For the office of the President of the United States to send out a representative certainly suggests that something significant was deemed to have happened here that was worthy of top-level investigation.
If Andrew Greenwood's claims of government intimidation prove to be true, it leaves us with more questions than answers.
It suggests one of two disturbing things: that the government was involved with the craft, or that they know what the craft is and are not telling us.
Either way, it begs the question, why? Why aren't they telling us?
If the Men in Black who visited Mr. Greenwood wanted to keep the incident quiet, they failed. The bizarre event involving a schoolyard, a UFO, and 5 unexplained aircraft is today one of Australia's most captivating mysteries.
What really strikes me 55 years on is that everybody concerned is still sticking to their stories.
Some people are absolutely convinced it was an alien encounter, while others think it was the government testing a new secretive technology.
Whether it's aliens or secret tech, Greenwood thinks the Australian government has something to hide.
Andrew Greenwood believes that there has been a cover-up from the highest levels of government. He says that there's a report that exists and that it's been buried.
We still have no concrete answers as to what actually happened.
While the witnesses wait for answers, this 1966 possible sighting of a UFO is unlikely to be forgotten anytime soon.
It's a Saturday evening, the 26th of November 1977, in the south of England. Families are settling down to watch the news when...
This is the voice of Emma, representative of the Earthbound Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years, you have seen us as lights and as darkness. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race, and what you must take to avoid the disasters threatening your world.
The so-called voice of Vrillon issued a blood-curdling warning that humans must change their ways or be destroyed.
People were terrified. It seemed to be an alien message beamed into their living rooms, warning of catastrophe if they didn't mend their ways.
The Independent Broadcast Authority carried out an investigation.
The channel put out an apology saying there had been a breakthrough in sound during the news bulletin.
It was probably the biggest audience that an alleged alien communication has ever reached. But its content was very typical of the kinds of messages that people who say they've been contacted by aliens have received.
The unnerving speech lasted 6 minutes, and while many thought it was a hoax, some claimed to have heard messages like this before.
There was a Californian called George Adamski. In 1952, he claimed that he was visited by aliens in the desert. And one of the aliens, an alien called Orthon, told him that atomic tests risked killing all life on Earth. And worse, the radiation would spread into outer space, contaminating other planets.
Adamski's claims became so famous that he even got an audience with Queen Juliana of the Netherlands, who was said to be really impressed. But when the US Air Force investigated him, they branded him a fraud.
Today, there are still so-called experiencers who claim UFO occupants speak to them, often with messages of a dystopian future if we don't change our course as a society.
But the authorities take a different view. They acknowledge that there are unidentified flying objects in our skies, but whoever or whatever is controlling them is silent.
At the UFO congressional hearings in May 2022, America's spy chiefs were asked straight if we are in contact with the phenomena.
Tell me if I'm wrong, there's been no attempt, there's no communications or any kind of communication signals that emanate from those objects that we've detected, correct?
That's correct.
And have we attempted to communicate with those objects?
No.
If these craft are real, the intelligence behind them must be aware of us.
Or it could mean they're speaking. We just can't understand them.
An alien or otherworldly civilization might not communicate in the ways we assume they would.
We have to be prepared when we intercept alien languages for a whole different dimension of sound, of visuals, even smells when it comes to communicating.
NASA believes if we're going to understand how to communicate with aliens, then the first frontier could be animals.
Here on planet Earth, animals communicate obviously in a very different way to the way we humans communicate. We have verbalized language. But of course, you know, animals can communicate with each other. It's just not a language using words.
Since the 1950s, NASA's invested millions of dollars in trying to talk to dolphins. And this research has been pioneered by University of Pennsylvania medical graduate John C. Lilly.
Lilly's book, Man and Dolphin, threw up some really exciting possibilities about interspecies communication. And it was particularly exciting to NASA researchers.
Dolphins can solve complex problems and understand abstract ideas. They normally communicate with whistles and clicks. NASA wanted to know if they could be taught to speak English.
3 dolphins, including a particularly clever one called Peter, are taken to a specially built submerged laboratory in the Caribbean.
Lilly was incredibly excited about the research that he was doing and the communication potential with dolphins.
There was such a big feeling of optimism that the scientists even dubbed themselves the Order of the Dolphin.
The problem with the research that they were doing was that they were trying to teach dolphins to speak English, rather than trying to understand how dolphins communicate.
Scientists like Ivan Dutil at the University of Quebec believe that the answer to interplanetary communications may not be through linguistics, but through mathematics.
The engineers who build radio telescopes or any other kind of communication hub on other planets need to have a basic understanding of maths and physics.
It can be very easy to explain math to another culture if they use that same math themselves.
But according to the authorities, we're nowhere near that point. We're not even getting indecipherable code from these objects.
In 2022, scientists at Edinburgh University in Scotland came up with a theory about why we may not be getting the messages from aliens. And that is that they may be using quantum physics to communicate.
Calculations made by the scientists found that messages sent via quantum entanglement could travel interstellar distances.
An alien or alien craft here could communicate with home without the messages becoming scrambled by the enormous distances.
So a particle on an extraterrestrial craft could theoretically entangle with another particle back on the home world. At the moment, man-made technology finds communicating this way really difficult.
It would explain why we don't hear any signals being sent by UFOs if they're being sent using quantum physics. We simply don't have the technology to pick up those signals.
But even if we were able to receive these messages and decode them, they may not be a warning against environmental destruction, but a doomsday weapon in disguise.
In 2018, you have 2 astrophysicists, Michael Hipka and John Learned, and they release a paper warning that the signals potentially sent by an alien civilization could, of course, be an attack rather than a greeting.
A highly intelligent, superior civilization could send us a message, and within that message could be a superintelligent virus that could morph and take over everything here on Earth.
They warned that an alien signal could shut down our computers, bringing our technological society to an end. Or worse, they suggest it could even hijack our laboratories and factories to start construction of a new, different society and civilization on Earth.
If we do receive and decode an alien message, it could be our undoing. And that's a terrifying prospect, because we won't know until it's way too late.
Does the US government have a secret program testing the wreckage of a crashed UFO? This piece of paper could be the smoking gun. October 2002, Nevada, USA. In an ordinary parking lot, 2 men are said to have had an extraordinary conversation.
A very classified conversation allegedly occurred in the backseat of a car, which is not a great place to have a super secret classified information.
One of the men is space scientist Dr. Eric Davis.
He's an astrophysicist who's been a consultant to the Pentagon. He's worked with the Department of Defense, and he's respected as an academic in his field.
Davis is said to have had a clandestine meeting with Admiral Tom Wilson, who was then director of the Defense Intelligence Agency.
The DIA is a US government agency within the Department of Defense that oversees the CIA and the FBI.
Before Wilson was at the DIA, he was Director of Intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and had served since 1968. So he's a lifelong military man.
The two people involved are about as credible as you can get.
Admiral Wilson vehemently denies the meeting took place, but the contents are said to have been recorded by Dr. Davis himself. It becomes known as the Wilson Memo, and its contents are explosive.
The Wilson Memo, if it's real, indicates that there is a secret UFO crash retrieval program, and furthermore that it's run by a US government cabal, hidden from even our elected officials at the highest levels. Wilson had tracked down budgets and contracts for a secret government group investigating, among other things, crashed off-world vehicles, UAP crash sites, and materials recovered.
Wilson apparently spoke to one of the people engaged in this team. He queried whether recovered material might be terrestrial and foreign. He says he was laughed at.
They told Wilson he didn't have clearance to know anything more about it, and asked him to stop asking.
In the memo, Wilson is reported as saying he will deny all knowledge of the conversation if its existence is made public. Davis has refused to confirm or deny the meeting occurred.
But he has said he believes the UFO crash story is true.
The Wilson Memo is in itself an extremely significant document. It's basically their acknowledgement, yes, there is a very sensitive UFO program that is part of the United States government. No, we're not going to tell you anything about it, but what we will tell you that it's real and that it exists.
UFOs are said to have crashed at Aurora, Texas in 1897, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania in 1965, and of course Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Rumors of a secret US government program recovering them, and perhaps even the dead bodies of their occupants, have swirled for decades. In the 1980s, British UFO investigator Timothy Good claimed to have come across documents referring to a group called Majestic 12. A team of high-ranking American scientists, government officials, and military leaders, set up in the wake of the Roswell crash in 1947, secretly studying downed craft. Astrophysicist Davis wanted to find out if these stories were true or an elaborate fantasy. If the memo is genuine, Admiral Wilson confirms that the UFO cover-up is real.
The whole memo is practically a list of the events and the places that the public have been suspicious of for decades.
For almost 20 years, the memo was hidden in the private archives of NASA astronaut Edgar Mitchell, until it was leaked in 2019. The Admiral's supposed comments are so far-fetched, many consider it a hoax. But then, in May 2022, UFO congressional hearings were held in Washington, and the memo suddenly became a key piece of evidence in the hunt for the truth about UFOs.
The hearing is broadly about the increased and now publicized spotting of UFOs, or UAPs, that have been, in the majority of cases, seen by the Navy.
The American government has said, for the record, these are real.
The hearings featured Ronald Moultrie and Scott Bray, the leading figures in military intelligence, being quizzed by members of the United States Congress.
Bray and Moultrie refused to be drawn on many of the details of the UAP phenomena.
They deny that their department has any crash retrieval material, and they say they haven't heard of claims that UFOs have been shot down over nuclear sites in America.
We have detected no emanations within the UAP task force that would suggest it's anything non-terrestrial in origin.
And then Representative Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin asks what for many is an absolutely killer question.
Are you aware of a document that appeared around 2019, sometimes called the Admiral Wilson Memo or EW Notes Memo?
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not personally aware of that.
Okay. This is a document in which, again, I'm not commenting on the veracity. I was hoping you would help me with that, in which the former head of DIA claims to have had a conversation with the Dr. Eric Wilson and claims to have sort of been made aware of certain contractors or DoD programs that he tried to get fuller access to and was denied access to. So you're not aware of that?
I'm not aware, Congressman.
In my 10 seconds remaining, then, I guess I just would ask, Mr. Chairman, unanimous consent to enter that memo into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Congressman Gallagher asked for the Wilson memo to be submitted for the record, public record. That is seismic.
Now that the Wilson memo is part of the record, it can be interrogated, and what's more, those it involves now have a responsibility to come forward and to reveal the truth.
Here is the legal conundrum, and this is probably why no one is commenting one way or the other. It is absolutely illegal in the United States to confirm the existence or acknowledge the existence of an unacknowledged wave SAP. A SAP is a special access program. It's considered the crown jewels of the intelligence community. There was above top secret, a SAP would be considered above top secret. It's top secret plus a bunch of other stuff.
Now, with the memo being brought up in an official capacity, it may not be long until the truth about the recovery of crashed UFOs and the secrets of their occupants is finally revealed.
It was actually Representative Gallagher raising it that really kind of upped its profile, if you like. Some argue that acknowledging it at all gives it a form of credibility.
Now that the memo has been entered into the record, there's talk of both Wilson and Davis being called to testify in front of the U.S. Congress. They would have to confirm or deny under oath. And if there's a contradiction between them, that would mean one of them is lying.
October 2016, NASA, the North American Space Agency, reveals it's hired 24 new staff for an extraordinary mission. Not astronauts, but priests.
NASA has hired priests to discuss the implications were humans to encounter extraterrestrials.
One of the priests hired is Reverend Dr. Andrew Davison. He's a theologian who works at Cambridge.
I spent 9 months at the Center of Theological Inquiry in Princeton on a project funded as part of NASA's work to encourage thinking about astronomy and astrobiology among non-scientists. I'm interested in theology and extraterrestrial life. I like the idea of helping the human community, and my own religious tradition in particular, to think ahead about this topic so that we're ready for if there ever is evidence of a discovery.
NASA's official position is that these priests were hired to discuss the implications of finding traces of life on distant solar systems. But religious texts seem to show non-human intelligence has been at work on this planet for a very long time.
If this is a question of extraterrestrial visitation, then maybe the church has some answers. After all, they've got ancient records of human experiences.
In the Old Testament, there are many accounts of heavenly ascents to earth. They are part of the Jewish macabre mysticism tradition.
One of these macabre accounts is written by the prophet Ezekiel. He was a priest living in Jerusalem in the 6th century BC, and the Babylonians invaded the city, and some of the inhabitants of Jerusalem, including Ezekiel, were brought to a prison camp.
And it was at this prison camp that Ezekiel was first visited.
Ezekiel first sees 4 beings, parting the clouds in a thunderous fashion. A chariot, or Merkabah in Hebrew, comes down from the sky.
Ezekiel describes different angels and strange creatures holding the chariot.
Sitting on the chariot was a glowing humanoid creature. Ezekiel describes this creature as having the appearance of the glory of the Lord.
Could it be possible that instead of accounts of experiences with God, these are accounts of experiences with advanced extraterrestrial life forms? Could one ancient prophet's flying heavenly chariot be another 21st century person's spacecraft?
And the clues seem to crop up in centuries-old religious art.
Many religious paintings have objects in them that seem to some to be flying saucers. Take, for example, Masolino di Panicale's painting of the Miracle of the Snow, which depicts a 4th century legend about a miraculous snowfall in Rome on a hot summer day. For a detail-oriented painter like Panicale, do those disc-shaped clouds not look quite simplistic?
The Catholic Church hasn't always been keen on scientists inquiring too deeply into the true nature of reality. The astronomer and mathematician Galileo promoted the idea in the early 1600s that the Earth revolves around the Sun. It was a theory deemed heretical by the Roman Inquisition, and Galileo died under house arrest after trying to prove his belief. But while this was happening, the Vatican was secretly making its own investigations of the cosmos.
The truth is, religious institutions, and particularly the Catholic Church, have been studying the sky for centuries.
The observatory at the Vatican has telescopes that date back to 1582.
The Vatican is one of the world's oldest astronomical institutions. Today, there are 12 astronomers who are also priests or Jesuit brothers. It owns huge modern telescopes like the VAT, the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, situated on Mount Graham in Arizona, USA. And alongside the VAT lies a pair of 8.4-meter telescopes that have become known as the Lucifer telescopes.
Lucifer was an acronym for, wait for it, Large Binocular Telescope Near Infrared Spectroscopic Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research.
Because some people were offended by the Lucifer name, it was shortened to Lucy.
The Lucy telescopes were designed and built by the Lucy Consortium, a group of 4 German institutions. They're unique in that they can perform infrared spectroscopy, the analysis of infrared light when it interacts with a molecule. It's used to try to identify signs of life.
If you looked at the Earth from a long way away, you'd be able to tell from the balance of gases in our atmosphere that something very unusual was going on, that probably there was life here.
So what if we were to use Lucifer to do a spectroscopic analysis on other parts of the universe?
If a powerful telescope could see life molecules on other planets, they would appear transparent with a red edge.
The red edge would be, in effect, that big eureka moment that we'd found life.
Certainly, the Vatican is studying space from their VAT telescope. And only last year, in 2021, Father Richard Boyle discovered a whole new member of the solar system. It's a tiny dwarf planet, smaller than Pluto.
Maybe the Vatican and NASA have been in lockstep for years, secretly sharing information in preparation for an event that will have profound consequences, not just for our understanding of science, but for our understanding of who we are as human beings and our place in the universe.
Brother Guy Consolmagno, the director of the Vatican Observatory, actually says that the Catholic intellectual tradition would have absolutely zero problem with the idea of intelligent life on other planets.
NASA's hiring of theologians is food for thought. Perhaps there is some earth-shattering news on the way.
I don't think that human life will be any less wonderful, any less special, any less loved by God, just because there's more of it elsewhere. On that front, I would just think the more the merrier.
Perhaps, or maybe an encounter with a godlike species may shatter everything we think we know.
To me, NASA reaching out to religious leaders is just proof that there are still some things science can't explain.